maybe one of the differences that I could see potentially is that I joined Bleacher Report after the acquisition was announced, 2 years before the DOJ finally got around to approving it.
Yeah.
But I joined knowing that what AT&T could do. I felt like that was an accelerator for this business, almost like strapping a rocket ship alongside our content org. And Bleacher Report has always been about distribution. At most media companies, the one we sit in, right, are housed in here. Content is king. For us, distribution is king. And I can't imagine a better way to tap into a accelerator of distribution than what we can get with AT&T.
Absolutely. So things are going well, right? I mean, I think we reported today, Digiday has reported that you guys are going to do $200 million in revenue this year.
That's what they reported, yeah. Not confirmed, but reported.
Also, I've heard that year over year you guys are way up. So what?
49%.
49%.
Yeah, first half.
And this is at a time when a lot of digital media companies are struggling to meet their valuations that they've gotten from a lot of their venture-backed investors. A lot of folks aren't profitable. So what do you think is going on at Bleacher Report that maybe separates you guys from some of these other companies?
Yeah, outside of my hire, I think, look, we're in an interesting position. We think about the media landscape as a continuum, right? And on one side of it, you have premium publishers, and on the other end, you have platforms, Facebook, Google, Twitter, et cetera. Because of our app product, our app generates about 45% of our traffic and revenue. We have 20 million total downloads, 9.5 million people opted in to receive alerts. We're more than a publisher. We're probably less than a platform today, but we're trending closer to being one. And so as we continue to release social features and functionality, commenting, we have direct messaging in beta, we're starting to see performance metrics and numbers that give us a chance to operate more like a platform than a publisher. So that starts with data that moves out to ad experiences and opportunity. And so I think as the rest of that field really begins to feel the weight on their business model from the distributed web and the economics therein, the fact that we've built an organic social media distribution mechanism that requires a lot less of that distribution, and the fact that our app is operating more like a platform, we kind of sit in this middle territory where we don't see a lot of other businesses that look like us right now.
Yeah, and it's you guys doing this thing. I think we reported today you guys launched this thing, BR Gridiron, which is a vertical aimed at fans of NFL fans.
Football, yeah.
Which is, it's an interesting move because you see a lot of digital media companies like Vox Media, for example, they consolidated Recode and Vox. So they're having fewer verticals. But it seems like you guys see the pathway to growth as, look, we want to be in more places. We want to have more of these distinct standalone brands that sort of feed into this larger mothership.
Yeah, look, fundamentally, we exist to bring fans closer to the players and the sports that they love. And so the way that we think to do that is to try to find those meaningful connection points. So if you look at, the NBA, right? One of the most interesting things about the NBA is that the NBA has done more to advance the connection between players and fans than any league. It's been a social media first league for a few years now. And what that means is that the conversations that used to happen, say, on SMS, right, now happen inside of an Instagram feed, like on Bleacher Report or House of Highlights. And so, my 14-year-old son can log on and see Drake and LeBron going back and forth on a post. Again, that was a text message conversation, but now it's interactive. And so the way that we think about creating and finding those connections is to open the aperture on the different ways that consumers can experience, or fans really can experience, sports through a different lens. And we've done that successfully across a number of what we call portfolio brands. So BR Football, which is, we've built a 40-person team in London that manages that with of course, some larger US support. We have BR Kicks, which is our streetwear and sneaker channel. We have BR Betting, which is a pretty obvious and self-explanatory.
Right.
And we've found that some of the younger generation of players like OBJ and Baker Mayfield and others in and around the sport of football are, of course, they've always been celebrities and stars, but their personalities are starting to come through. And we felt like a player and fan connection was evolving there in a way that was opportunistic for us to launch BR Gridiron.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these athletes, be they in the NBA, the NFL, Major League Soccer, what have you, maybe less Major League Soccer, I don't know. But a lot of them have their own social followings, and they don't need a media company to be their intermediary, right? Like LeBron has Uninterrupted, which is like based on the idea that he doesn't need Sports Illustrated necessarily. No shade at SI though, because SI is great. But like in that era, like what is your pitch to these athletes? Like how do you tell them like, hey, here's what we can do for you? Because they could go directly to their fans, right?
Look, invariably, yes, right? We still firmly believe that media has a place, that media has connection points, that we have distribution and punching power that far outweighs that of what athletes have on their own. When you think about engagement for a second, there are sports brands, one specifically, right, larger than Bleacher Report in social, but our engagement is 3x what theirs is. So when you think about that, we are small but mighty. Our punching power is significantly larger than our size. And so athletes understand that, they tap into that, and they look not just for those messages that they can push out as if it were a press release that they're putting out, but they look for that third-party endorsement, and they look for the contact, the connection, and the engagement that Bleacher Report delivers in ways very, very different than they can get on their own.
Yeah, and you guys are doing like e-commerce drops with them, right? Like I think around Dwayne Wade was one.
Yeah, I haven't seen all the presentations at this conference. I have to guess I'm not the first person to speak about the importance of non-advertising revenue, but it looms large. And so one of the ways that we're exploiting that, we started out doing some, T-shirts. A player says something or something happens on the field, and we push out a T-shirt, and we do a little bit of that still, but that's not really our market. Our market's more upstream. So last year for the World Cup, we partnered with some A-list hip-hop artists. So we had The Roots, Vince Staples, 21 Savage, and they designed soccer kits for their hometown. So Atlanta and Los Angeles, Philadelphia in the case of The Roots. And they sold out incredibly well. We $88 a piece, we sold out in like 2 days, and we knew we were onto something. And so since then, we've done collaborations with Travis Scott, where we partnered him with Mitchell and Ness. We sold out in 15 minutes. Again, these are more akin to like a streetwear drop. We did one with Dwayne Wade celebrating his last dance and his last season, which felt more like a concert tour, the way that like Drake did at Scorpion Tour. We just launched one this week, led by Billie Eilish, around U.S. women's soccer team, and launched a series of soccer kits and jerseys meant to spark conversation and lead us further down the path of female empowerment and eventually hopefully paying these women what they deserve.
Yeah. Do you get a sense that you have buy-in from the brass at AT&T, Randall Stevenson, John Stanky? Like, I think it's one thing for you guys to be doing this on your own, like with your own P&L, but do you get the sense that AT&T is going to be really investing in Bleacher Report?
None of them have called for any of the shirts we've put out. But of course, I'd be happy to get one if Randall wants.
Right.
Yeah, I think we do have buy-in. Look, one of the things that that we've been told, that we've heard, that we see is that when you think about direct-to-consumer brands and direct-to-consumer brands in sports, there aren't very many, if any, that rival Bleacher Report. And so when you think about what the power of that means relative to the broader ecosystem inside of AT&T, the connections we have with younger millennial and Gen Z sports fans is enormous. It is growing, and I'm fairly certain that those are the consumers, or the kinds of consumers that any business, let alone AT&T, wants to continue to tap into.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like one signal that they were really invested would be if they told you, look, they're doing this thing, HBO Max or their streaming service, what have you. It would be great if they said, look, here's what Bleacher Report will look like on this streaming service, or like, here's what real estate you will have. Do you get a sense from them that they're thinking about how to include sports generally, but also Bleacher Report in this TBD streaming service?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Can you give me like any color on that, or?
No.
No.
But look, invariably, when you think about live sports and live integrations in general, so I'll give you a great example. We did a documentary with Showtime that we sold to Showtime on the Ron Artest story called A Quiet Storm. And part of the way that we built that, we packaged it, but part of the way that we began to sort of generate the enthusiasm around our community for it is inside of our app we hosted an AMA. Now, traditionally we would host our AMAs on Reddit, just like everybody else does. We would average on Reddit about 1,000, 1,500 at most questions. I think our average is about 1,100. We did an AMA inside of our app a week and a half ago with Ron Artest. We got 3,900 questions.
Wow.
More than tripled what we get inside of Reddit. We did one yesterday with Julian Edelman, who I think was here at this conference yesterday. We got 5,200 questions. So when you think about the opportunity to sort of tap into live sports, this AMA, you could argue, well, look, great, you did a Q&A with 5,100 people. Who cares? We care because it proves out that this, back to the continuum for a second, the social bets that we're making are working, one. Two, we're able to drive real engagement in community. Three, we're able to take those content and content experiences and port them up into our social ecosystems and push them out at scale. And four, we have something we feel that is really genuinely, truly evolving in a way that is driven by our alerts. And so back to those 9.5 million consumers that receive alerts, the ability to drive tune in app against younger demos, again, I just don't see anyone else doing that. And that's a huge point of differentiation for us and something that invariably AT&T will benefit from.
Yeah, I mean, one way that AT&T could, they have this thesis, which is that they really want to break down these fiefdoms and they want everyone to be rowing in the same direction. And one thing that you guys could benefit immensely from is they have, DirecTV has Sunday Ticket. I mean, I think that's coming up, but they have it for another year or another few months. I'm not exactly sure. They have the rights to those football games out of market. They could give you guys highlights, clips. I mean, I don't know how their deal is structured, but do you get a sense that they're thinking about sharing the sports rights bounty with you guys? Because you guys have NBA rights through Turner, right?
We have NBA rights, we have MLB, we have NCAA tournament, we have UEFA, which is that rare example where, tail wagging the dog, if you will, Bleacher Report and BR Football are the lead on linear, and we're driving that through our app and our social engagements. Relative to AT&T, I don't know the terms or the complexities of those deals, so that sounds great. If you want to call someone and pitch that.
I'll call Randall, yeah.
Yeah, I have no news to make on that today.
Right. What about, I mean, one point of question that I have is what ultimately is, so Jeff Zucker is the president of CNN Worldwide. Recently, I think about beginning of the year or so, he was promoted to head up Warner Media News and Sports, which is kind of like the new umbrella brand for all this. Do you have a sense of some of the changes that he's making or what he's trying to do with the company?
Jeff's been amazing so far, really. He's brilliantly smart. He's insanely connected, and he buys into BR's vision, our plan, our strategic roadmap, and he is involved in healthy ways, but he's not necessarily we're not talking day to day.
He's not commenting on the Edelman thing?
He might be, but I would imagine he's got a burner account for that.
Right. Okay, cool. I also wanted to ask you generally about sort of like where you guys go from here. Yeah. Given that you guys are having this year where you're having a high percentage year-over-year growth, that's awesome, but it's also, the bigger you get, the harder it is to grow at those numbers. So what are you guys, like what's coming next for the company? Where do you think the big areas, so like I'll give you an example, like Dan Porter's the founder of Overtime. He is doing this thing where he's like, it seems like he's beginning to create like a league, and he wants to create some of his own IP around this league that he's creating. Sure. That seems like very capital intensive, but also strikes me as something that could be remunerative in the long run.
Yeah.
What do you see like that, or what do you think? What do you see for the future?
I'm still pondering the word remunerative. I went to a state school. That's scary. I can't comment too much on their business model or what they're doing.
Yeah.
You're the only place I've really heard about that from. Uh-huh. I think it's important to differentiate an event versus a league, right? So we've seen a lot of success. Dana White mentioned some of the success we had with the match. So in and around a world where sports betting is legalizing and where we've launched BR Betting, and that is opportunistic. We have a 24/7, 365 content studio on the floor in the sportsbook in Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. We're producing and shooting a number of like premium broadcast quality shows from that. We're also shooting daily content from that and pushing those experiences up and out as shoulder programming or embedded into the sports that we're airing live on Turner. So we like that. We like those live experiences, and we think that for the part of our business that is always on, that that can create great content. We're fortunate to have those league rights and relationships with the leagues that I've already mentioned. So the distinction I would make between hosting an event that captures some content that you can push up versus forming a league are vast. And so if you're forming a league, that's capital intensive, and that's a huge deal. There's a long tail of hundreds of leagues forming now. They're not what I think is complementary to our business. I don't have any plans to form leagues, but we do have plans to continue hosting events like The Match. We do have plans to continue hosting events like basketball camps that we launched for House of Highlights. So, when you think about House of Highlights has 13.5 million followers on Instagram. It is a massive platform. It is, significantly larger than the brand that you mentioned in every possible way that you could measure it. And we've already started launching basketball camps. So if you're a young kid in middle school or in high school who's starting to get attention, would you want to go to a camp that might have some other great AAU players and you get some sneakers, or do you want to go to a camp that's going to get you visibility on the largest and most popular highlight channel in the world?
Yeah.
And so we think that there's opportunities there. I would stop short of calling that a league, but those are live content-based opportunities that we're packaging out, and we'll continue to explore and experiment, not just on House of Highlights, but across all of BR.
Yeah. What do you see as the future of sports betting? I think Randall Stevenson has said that Turner/Warner Media will not become a sports book. Mm-hmm. But you have Fox with Fox Bet. They seem to be interested in actually, at least on the front end, doing that work. I think The Score, which is in Canada, they're thinking about taking the Fox Bet approach, where they're actually going to take wagers and pay out payments. But the advertising opportunity and the affiliate opportunity is still pretty big. But it's also, I feel like the other business is kind of high volume, low margin. This business is maybe less volume, but the margin's a little better. Which one do you see yourselves playing in?
That's a good question. I don't actually think about it through either lens. Of course, I think about advertising revenue, right? We have a largely ad-supported business that takes up a fair amount of my time. But I'm not thinking about it like that. I'm not thinking about it as being a bank. I'm mostly interested in thinking about it through the lens of content. How do we, if you go back to our foundational mission, which is how do we connect, fans closer to the players and the sports that they love, it's proven that bettors are better sports fans, right? They watch more, they engage more deeply. And so I think about it through the lens of content experiences. And when I think about it, so you work at the Wall Street Journal, right? If you're writing a story on AT&T, it would almost be irresponsible for you to not mention some measure of data about the health and vitality of the company. Maybe stock price is the easiest way to do it, but there are other factors, and you have a ton of that data accessible to you. I'm most interested in from a storytelling lens. I think we're looking out as legalization rolls out and consumer acceptance continues to increase, and it's already incredibly high against younger millennial and older Gen Z audiences, that we're looking at a world where a few years down the line, it would be as irresponsible for a writer at BR to cover a story without mentioning some of the data and metrics that we get from gambling about those teams as it would be for you to not mention the stock price about an AT&T story. So I think about the money side of it for sure. I think about on both ends, whether it be linkage or whether it be just broad monetization. But I'm mostly curious and deeply engaged right now in how this affects storytelling and ultimately how those changes start to take shape for our journalists and for our fans' expectation and how deeply we can or will get into those sports.
Yeah, and you guys have a deal with Caesars, right? Mm-hmm. You guys have a sports book in the Caesars Palace.
We have a content studio.
Content studio, not a sports book. Not a sports book. No, they have a sports book.
Yeah.
You have a content studio. You guys are producing content that's kind of aimed at sports bettors, I think. Yeah. But do you, in addition to the licensing deal that you guys have done with them, do you think this is a meaningful business opportunity?
We do, yeah. I think if you, through the lens of storytelling and through the lens of the expectation that our consumers will continue, the increasing expectations our consumers will have for us to embed that content and that data that we get through that relationship into our stories, I think that this is a a robust opportunity. I think it's a large business, and I do think that, you know, when I mention BR football and I mention House of Highlights, you know, BR betting is probably third right now in terms of what I see as just being a massive opportunity for us into the future.
Yeah. When you look out at the competitive landscape,
Sure.
who do you think that BR should be kind of like stealing market share from, and like what areas do you think you guys should be getting into?
Two questions. I think, again, so go back to the app as platform bet that we're making and the social features and functionality we're rolling out. We probably should be looking, we are looking to steal share more from the platforms than we are from individual publishers. You know,
Yeah.
take the AMAs, right, that we're rolling out. I'm absolutely fine with other media companies tapping into and accessing that. You know, if there are other publishers that feel like they can benefit from our platform, and I think they can, I think they should, then we're open for business in that way. And so I think the traditional, you know, head-to-head, this is our competitor, relationships are evolving and are changing and are diminished. I can't say that that's true for our ad sales team, right? They have to scrap and claw for every dollar out there. But more broadly, strategically across the business for our biz dev deals and for our technology deals and our content deals, no, I don't really, there's not a single publisher I could name.
Yeah.
But again, my ad sales team, there's probably times they feel like Napoleon getting picked at from all sides, but they've won more than they've lost, so that's good.
Yeah. I mean, does the value prop for the app, is that more difficult now that ESPN Plus exists and people can watch sports on their phones?
No, because live sports is a portion of what we're thinking about and what we do. It is not the extent. So again, the social features, the functionality, the engagement, the average consumer opens the BR app 4.5 times a day. Those are platform-like numbers, you know? Those alerts with 9.5 million consumers, you know, opted in to receive them and receiving them on average 58 seconds faster than, say, ESPN. They're the 900-pound gorilla. They have to be respected. I think there's a lot of smart people there. I like a lot of people there, but I don't see what they're building as a competitor to what we're building. We're pursuing two entirely different areas. They're looking to replace declines in you know, linear. We're looking to build a social media platform that can stand up on its own.
Yeah. Can you talk to me a little bit about MLS? I think you recently did a presentation about sort of the growth of the domestic soccer fandom. You guys have a vertical BR football dedicated to that fandom. It seems like although it's growing in popularity, football has sort of struggled to gain traction in the US for a long time. Yeah. You guys had a funny video about like how it's like great to be a European soccer player in America because like you can score like 5 goals every game.
Right.
But like, do you
it's getting harder. It's down to like 2.
Do you see that? Like, what do you think is holding that back? And do you think that's actually going to become a thing?
Well, there's a number of questions there, right? So we don't have a strategic partnership with MLS, although we do cover it clearly in BR football. We've chosen to have a strategic partnership with the U.S. rights holder for UEFA, right? So if you think about soccer fandom in America, we've been hearing for 30 years that soccer is the next big thing. We think we have data-driven evidence to prove that it is the next big thing and that it's happening now. So if you look at soccer fandom, everyone is a UEFA fan, right? Almost every MLS fan started as a UEFA fan, or the majority of them are UEFA fans. I think it's like close to 90%. So that felt like a better, you know, partnership for us at the time. But as you start to think about fandom and how it's rooted, we're seeing some pretty significant changes. So if your age is, I think it's 24 to 32, and a soccer fan, most likely it's the social element. You gravitate towards soccer, you wear a jersey, you pick a team, you know, you meet friends at a bar, and it's really largely driven by social. If your age is 17 through 23, your engagement point of interest is FIFA, the game. Right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, it has had some declines as of late, but for that generation, that is where their fandom was rooted. They rooted not just for the social element, but because they fell in love with the team, they played it, they got to know the players, they had a deeper connection. The younger demo, say 12 to 16, right now what we're seeing is they're rooted in geography. And what I mean by that, and this actually speaks well for the MLS eventually down the line, is if you live in New York, you know, someone might say you're a Jets fan or a Giants fan, or you're a Mets fan or you're a Yankee fan. If you lived in a smaller market, you have one team, and that's who you're expected to identify with, and you better have a pretty good reason why not, because like, oh, my dad's from Baltimore, and that's why I like it, you know. So long story short, what we're seeing with those kids, 12 to 16, is that their fandom is rooted in geography. So if you live in Atlanta, you're an Atlanta fan, right? If you know, LA, the Galaxy has a large following, Portland. And so you're starting to see fandom now take shape and evolve in different ways. It's not just driven by social, it's not just driven by the video game, it's driven by geography. And when it starts to take root like that, it seems to us, our conclusion, our hypothesis, is that feels a lot more like fandom that you're seeing in football and in basketball and in baseball. And as that takes shape and as that takes root, we really firmly believe that the pattern of fandom and the levels of engagement is evolving and changing in significant ways that definitely means something great for UEFA, that definitely means something great for the World Cup, and that probably over time starts to become something meaningful for the MLS.
Yeah. Last question for me before we throw it to the audience. Do you guys, obviously every publisher, every media company is trying to diversify its revenue. Do you guys are, for the most part, ad supported, I think?
80%.
80%?
Yeah.
Given the, possible there could be a recession eventually, do you feel like it's important to diversify? Like, have you thought about, because the app is habit forming, could there be a subscription component there?
It's not on the table for us. Truthfully, I know the subscription revenue is the holy grail for a lot of media companies right now, and I get it. AT&T is thinking along those similar lines. I don't think that that's the path for BR. We have authentication in our app, so we launched authentication, which is a foundational element that we'll build towards as we release direct messaging, right? So how do you find your friends? Why do you need to find them? Why do we need to know about them? Because we're giving you a purpose-driven, a product-driven reason to sort of engage. That we've done, I think, about 2.5 million authentications in the last 6 months.
Wow.
On that. It's free, it's not paid, but it gives us a ton of data. It really sets the path out for what we're trying to build as a social platform. Our bet is that the first wave of social media is about connecting you to the world, and the second wave of social media is about connecting you to your world. And so we like that for that. I just don't know, in a world where you have Netflix and YouTube and AT&T and Amazon and Disney all vying to replace the bundle in terms of spending, right, for consumers, that there's going to be this enormous long tail of opportunity for individual publishers like, well, our recipes are the best, so you'll pay for them, right? Or you can go down the line. It doesn't matter what category you're looking at.
Yeah.
So I think there's enough free content out there. The point of engagement for us is how can we differentiate? How can we find a voice, a tone, and how can we find a technology product, which we believe is our app and the way that we engage on social, that allows you to sort of have an ownership stake with them. And again, if any subscription partners, paid or not, want to sort of partner with us up in and around our app and create channels and host AMAs, like, we're open for business because we don't see that as a competitive threat to our business model. In fact, we're built to engage with them there.
100%. All right, what did I forget to ask, guys? Do we have time for 1 or 2 questions?
It's early.
Oh,
Everyone
cool.
needs coffee.
All right, it's on Twitter.
I was looking for hands, but hashtag sports, duh.
So I'll read this one. For Howard Mittman, what does the fall betting programming schedule look like for BR Caesar partnership? How big of a business can merch apparel for BR long term? B for BR.
B for BR long term.
I have trouble reading sometimes.
Yeah. So let's see, the fall betting programming schedule, I won't release all of it, but we have, BR Gridiron, which is our football-focused vertical that we've just launched. We'll have 3 new shows coming out. One is the Left Go show, which will be about unmasking players and giving an opportunity to sort of let their personality and their connection shine through. We, of course, have Taylor Rooks. Take It There is going to be another one. We have a show launching with one of our really amazing young talents, Master Tesfacian. So we have a couple of different shows launched in and around that. And really that's, Bleacher Report, if I'm being honest, is the place where you go and get a lot of your football coverage, but it's not always outside of some of the examples we have with stick to football and the Lefko show the place where you go to for football coverage, right? And so now I think with the formation of BR Gridiron, it gives us a broader North Star and it gives us a way to sort of have a more distinct player-focused point of view on the sport. So we'll have those and of course a live series of live fantasy betting shows that will roll out with our partnership with Caesars. As for merch apparel, we think it's significant, you know. The way that we're thinking about merch apparel is clearly, can we make money off of the sale of the merch? That's a big part of it. But in addition to that, we see this as a content and commerce play. So take the Dwayne Wade partnership, right? In my old world, I would have, you know, had teams of people spending months trying to get in touch with Dwayne Wade and say, like, the end cap of your career, it should be an exclamation point, and that exclamation point should come by being on the cover of a magazine. What better way to sort of like, you know, end your career with this unbelievable time?
Because you were at GQ
honored.
previously, right?
Yes, yeah, you know, presence. Okay, so what do you need to do? You spend like, give us 2 days of your time in like an inconvenient location and probably 2 days travel time on either end, and you know, we'll push it out.
Annoying journalist has to ask you a ton of questions.
Totally. We'll push out a cover story, right?
Right.
And there'll be a picture of you jumping in the air like that with sneakers. Cool. So that works. It still works. It's great. But what we did is we flipped the model on its head. We say, give us 3 hours of your time. We're going to send a crew to wherever the hell you are. We're going to capture and create compelling content. We're going to create a revenue model, and we're going to cut you in on that revenue model. And so we've made mid-7 figures on that deal. And
Just the Dwayne Wade one?
Just the Dwayne Wade one alone.
Wow.
And
that's profit.
yeah, and Dwayne, well, top line.
Top line, I hear you.
But Dwayne taps in on that. So would you rather sit down with a legacy media company and get a couple of photos taken and something that might end up in a barbershop? Or do you want to sit down and go with Bleacher Report and have access to the single most engaged social distribution mechanism in and around sports? It's even the fact that we're the number 3 most engaged brand on Twitter. It's Trump, Ariana Grande, and us. We were second for a while, but she ended up in some Twitter beef with someone. I don't know. I don't know who it was.
That's really interesting company.
Yeah. So when you think about that yeah, right, totally. That gives us the power to be able to sort of move markets and to be able to sell this. And from an athlete perspective, we get great commerce, we get great content. They have a really unique opportunity, and we think it's a model. We know it's a model that there's a lot of engagement with right now.
Yeah. You want to do one more?
Sure.
All right, you mentioned rivals or lack of in the direct-to-consumer space. What are your thoughts on League Pass, Game Pass, and how that would affect the TBD Bleacher Report OTT service? What engagement metric do you prefer to use?
That's a lot.
Do you guys have an OTT service coming?
We have Bleacher Report Live.
But that's out already.
That's out already.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, I think League Pass, Game Pass, I think those are all great. Again, we are built for a world. We exist in a world where your smartphone is the first screen, right? And so how you can engage consumers, how you can sort of create content experiences in game, out of game, that's ultimately what matters to us. The point of difference I would make on us versus all of the OTT offerings that are out there, those OTT offerings are focused on live sports only. So that happens for 2 to 3 hours, right? What do you do the other 23 hours of the day? What are you providing for fans? And so what we're building, we think, is a socially activated engagement mechanism that will allow us not only to sort of capture fans' attention in-game, but it will give us an opportunity to engage them throughout the rest of the day through news, through alerts, through content experiences. It's the same model that we've been following for the last couple of years now, where we talk about like owning the off season. Fandom is a 365-day-a-year experience. So look at what we've been able to do, even what the NBA has been able to do with the sport of basketball, right? It used to be that it started with the opening tip-off and it ended when the trophy got handed out. Mm-hmm. Now you have the NBA awards, you have Summer League, you have free agency, you have the draft. You don't unfollow LeBron or you don't unfollow House of Highlights because the season is over. You're engaging 365 days a year. So that gives us a chance to engage those fans. It gives the leagues a chance to deepen and foster those connection points. And there's also, not insignificantly, some additional opportunities for monetization around live events and packaging that we've started to explore. We'll be in Vegas in a few weeks for Summer League with Jump Off, which is a program that we launched last year that was quite successful for us, and we'll be back. So I think there's a great way to capture content, port that out to your consumers, and bring advertisers and partners along for the ride.
Awesome. Thanks so much for doing this. This has
Cool.
been great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All right.